Today I'll be talking a little bit about the game Omega Quintet. Now, I know what you're thinking, this is going to be some stupid weeb game, but it's actually a really fun game. If you're not familiar with games like Hyperdimension Neptunia, I'll explain a little bit about that in detail. This game is made by Idea Factory and Compile Heart. One of them is the developers and one of them is the publisher. And they're known for making certain kinds of games. I've played their games for many years. I started with, I think, Record of Agorist War, and that was back in 2010, and that is actually one of the games I could never finish. Like, I play every single game to the end, but that was the only game I've ever played where I couldn't get to the ending. I would have to have cheated, and I played it when it was on the Xbox, so I couldn't cheat until it came to the PC later on, because it was just such a grueling game. But basically, these developers, they've made many games since then. They've made a lot. They're known for the Hyperdimension Neptunia series, which stars Neptune, and they've made a lot of spin-offs off of that, like Hyperdimension Neptunia Girls versus the Sega Hard Girls. That was one of the spin-offs. I know they make spin-offs for the main characters in Hyperdimension, like Noir, Blank, and I think they're gonna come out with the Four Goddesses Online, which is another spin-off game from the main series. And they've made a lot of games since then. Omega Quintet is one of their games, but it came out many years ago. See, now this publisher, what they've been doing recently is these games are kind of old, like maybe from the last 5 or so years, and what they've been doing recently is porting them from, usually it's on the Sony console, so the PS3 and PS4, and they add touch-ups and like little quality of life improvements to the game to make it a little bit easier, and they port it to Steam, and they've been getting a lot of extra money from doing so. And a lot of these Japanese publishers, they've been doing this with older games to help squeeze out extra money. It seems like it doesn't cost as much to port it to Steam as you would get the number of sales and then some. I know, like, I think it was back in 2014, Sega ported Valkyria Chronicles from the PS3, which used to be a PS3 exclusive game, and they ported it to the PC for Steam, and the sales went nuts. It even beat Assassin's Creed Unity, the like big AAA release that was coming out at that time. And you know, this old game, Valkyria Chronicles, which originally came out like maybe even before 2010, and then they ported it for the PC in 2014. This old game on a PC port, all of a sudden it was doing magnitudes better than like a hot AAA release that was coming out at a similar time. But anyway, since then, like a lot of these Japanese publishers, even the Final Fantasy games, the older one, which one was it? I think it was 13, as well as 13's sequels, like 13-2 and Lightning Returns. They've also been porting these to the PC as well. So it's common trend. So Omega Quintet is a kind of older game. I believe it was, it came out when the PS4 was released, even though this game doesn't make use of the PS4's capabilities at all. It came out like maybe a year after it released. I want to say 2014. So this release is a little bit later on, like this PC Steam release, because now it's about 2018, 2017, and they ported it to Steam. And a lot of people who didn't buy it for the PS4, and a lot of people didn't because, you know, it was a Hyperdimension, like, you know, Idea Factory, Compile Heart kind of game, and they're known for making certain kinds of games that not everyone likes. But when they come on Steam, you can get them for a good discount. Steam has really amazing discounts, in contrast to the console games. It might be tougher to find used copies and stuff. So I've been playing this game, and I'm surprised I missed out on it because it's a really decent game. So if you're not familiar with this publisher in particular, these Hyperdimension Neptunia games, they're really known for being low-budget games, and they recycle a lot of assets in the environment. It's not as bad as playing a random game on Steam. Like, you know, okay, like there's a lot of famous people. I know there's Jim Sterling. He does a lot of, he plays a lot of the, asset flipping, they call it, asset flipping games, where they just like shamelessly reuse assets and not even make an actual game. This Hyperdimension Neptunia is not like that at all. No. They make their own stuff. But the thing is, it's almost like a quasi they're definitely not AAA, but at the same time, Hyperdimension Neptunia games, they're not indie games either. So it's kind of like some weird intermediate between that, because they make their own stuff, but at the same time, they recycle their own stuff shamelessly to the point where they will actually have, this is a JRPG franchise, and you would expect new dungeons and stuff, but they would actually, especially with the Rebirth series, one of the Hyperdimension Neptunia reboots that came out 2015 for Steam. What happened was they would even like go as far as to make a dungeon and then reuse the exact same dungeon like 2 or 3 times throughout the game. Like you would never see any AAA publisher or anything do anything like that. These games are weird. They almost feel like indie games, but they're not indie games. No, don't make that mistake either. But yeah, they reuse stuff like mad. The gameplay can get kind of repetitive. It's turn-based combat, but really this one is it's not about strategy, to be honest. It's about grinding. You have to just get your numbers up quickly and mash your way through the enemies. There's a little bit of strategy that you can do, but it's not really that kind of game. You have a lot of special abilities, that kind of stuff. You recruit new party members. You can buy DLC. They make a lot of their money from the DLC, but you don't have to buy that at all. If you're lucky, you can buy it when it's on sale, and maybe you can get a lot of the DLC included for really cheap. And the DLC pretty much breaks the game, so don't do that. But that's what these games are known for. But what makes up the games is that they have a big visual novel aspect to the games, almost like Danganronpa, for example. So heck, if you want to go as far, you can even say this game is like Danganronpa, but the difference is instead of court cases, you have JRPG combat on a field where you can battle monsters or do whatever you want. You can do quests. These games typically would use a share system, but I think now I'm going a bit too much in detail about Hyperdimension Neptunia. But the point I'm trying to illustrate is that Omega Quintet is like a Hyper Neptunia game. It's also like, there was another one, Fairy Fencer and Fairy Fencer F. These games, they're also like Hyperdimension Neptunia games. But basically these games are known for, having kind of shitty combat, shitty gameplay, but they have visual novel aspects to the game. And when I say visual novel aspects, I mean that you'll be looking at a lot of funny character banter between different characters. You'd see a lot of these like skits, kind of like events with these portraits, these images of the characters on the screen talking. You can either play it in Japanese with subtitles, or you can play the dubbed version where they remade the lines in English and use the English voice actors. You can do it whatever you want. And yeah, like hours and hours of the game are predominantly just the visual novel scenes. It's not a bad thing. When I say visual novel as well, it's not like an old school visual novel game either. There's not that much choice, but there are multiple endings. So if you meet certain requirements, and it's usually not like branching options. I don't mean like that kind of storyline. Not branching storyline. It's more of a storyline where you can get a minimal ending, or if you do some extra quests, you can get the best ending. You know what I mean? It's not like you get a different ending for each choice. Some games are a little bit different, but in typical, like, they don't really do that. So this Omega Quintet, it's a weird game. It is like that, you have to grind up. If you buy DLC, or if you get like a version of the game that has DLC for free, you'll break the game easily. But this game is about, these Japanese idols who go and save the world. It's so stupid, it's so cheesy, it's so weebish. But if you like the dialogue and banter in the Hyper Neptunia series, I feel like you'd actually like this game a lot. Now, don't mistake this game for something else like a Falcom game. No, it's not like that. This game is actually more weebish. It does have like fan service. It's nothing inappropriate, nothing like bad at all. No. But it has a lot of fun banter between the characters. The characters are like lifting up the game in a good way, though. They're supporting the game a lot. Like, it's just so much fun to listen to. And I do tell people that if you're playing Hyperdimension Neptunia and you're trying to play it for the gameplay, you probably won't enjoy it, sadly. And the thing is, with me, I was so disappointed when I played my first one of these kinds of games. I was so sad. I'm like, what the hell kind of game is this? Why am I grinding so much? Why is this dungeon recycled? Why are all these enemy types recycled? There's only like 3-4 enemy types. Like, this is shit. But then I realized what I started to like about the game, and what I really liked about the game was actually the dialogue between the characters, the cutscenes. Now, these aren't like, as I said, it's like a visual novel. It's not like a cutscene in a game with action and ooh, sword fighting. Like, no, 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 you're not gonna get that. This is just characters' portraits, like, these character images flapping their mouth and just saying dialogue with voice actors. It's almost like listening to one of these Japanese or Korean drama CDs, okay, where they have voice actors and you're adding some cartoons on top of that. And I think actually the funny thing is that Hyperdimension Neptunia actually did release a few of those. They're really funny to listen to. You can find them on YouTube. But the thing is, you need to know what you're getting yourself into. It can be a repetitive game, but the dialogue is just so funny sometimes. And yeah, it has a certain culture to the game. It's not a game for everyone. And yeah, sometimes sadly, this is kind of a game you might want to hide from your friends. Like, a lot of people would probably hate you for playing this kind of game, but I think it's cute. I think it's a funny game. It has lots of funny moments. It's very lighthearted. Sometimes, sometimes you're in the mood for like a really evil a game that has a lot of plot twists and evil characters and sadness and despair. Like Danganronpa is a game where you have a lot of despair, but this game is like the opposite. Yeah, you have small conflicts in this game, but often it's very cartoony, and most of the time, with the exception of the bad ending in the second Hyperdimension Neptunia game, with the exception of that second game's bad ending, everything else is good. That game, though, if you know what I'm talking about, you're laughing your ass off. But that game has one ending that goes bonkers. It goes mad. But otherwise, these games, and Omega Quintet as well, very, very lighthearted, fun games to play, fun character interactions, and you wouldn't see this from any other kind of game. And it's a nice intermediate kind of game as well. Like, if you don't want to play a hardcore visual novel that's like all text and character dialogue and stuff, this game is a good balance. It has a balance of the JRPG gameplay, and it also has a balance of these visual novel like cutscenes. So that's good. It might even be a good way to ease yourself into the more visual novel hardcore kind of games. This might be a good starting point to see if you like this kind of stuff or not, because there's a lot of really challenging and really crazy visual novels on the market, or even for free, that you can find online, and those ones will have crazy branching dialogue paths, and they're really complicated, and some of them will get really hardcore because it has such a niche fan base. But Omega Quintet, yeah, it's really fun. For Omega Quintet specifically, it doesn't really have the branching paths either. There might be minor changes you can get, but overall, there's only no spoilers. There's only a good ending, and well, I can't even say a good ending. There's only like a bad ending and a good ending, and you have to do all of the quests to get most of the quests to get the good ending. So I did that. Yeah, and Omega Quintet does suffer because it has a lot of missables. Hey, but want to hear something weird, though? The weird thing is that this game came out early, like in 2014, and one thing I like about Omega Quintet a lot is that, in contrast to these publishers' other games like Neptunia Games or the Fairy Fencer F Games, this Omega Quintet has all unique dungeons. Now, actually, I think there is like one or two dungeons that recycle the other ones, but this game actually has a lot of unique landscapes and dungeons and stuff to explore. And in this game, I actually found it a lot of fun to explore the environments. You have to unlock certain environmental abilities. So it means like, oh, maybe you can't jump this high yet. You have to unlock them by doing side quests. They might be missable in some cases, so you can't get everything unless you plan it out well and read a guide. But I found it really fun to go back to old areas and revisit them, unlock new areas. It has a nice checkpoint teleportation system, so sometimes, it's not everywhere, but sometimes if you actually explore a lot, and some of these environments can get pretty big, if you want to hop back to a certain place quickly, the areas will often have these little teleportation areas that you can teleport to easily, so you don't have to run too crazy back and forth. Like, this game doesn't have a world, but it does have maps and it has maps and a kind of office area that's like your base in this game. And yeah, even though everything is low budget, and that's the thing with these Neptunia kind of games, is that everything is low budget. The characters, like, it looks like almost like PS2 era kind of graphics, and it's not a bad thing, but you have to get used to that. But the thing is, I liked about this game in particular is that it didn't recycle that much compared to the Neptunia games. In Neptunia games, they really recycle environments like mad. And the thing is, I just don't like exploring these like completely recycled environments. In Omega Quintet, I actually liked exploring the environment so much because it was, even though the graphics were bad, the content was actually mostly unique. So that was one of the pros I liked. And it sucks because this game came out really early, like 2014, and when I'm playing these Hyper Dimension Neptunia games that are being re-released on the Steam, some of these older Neptunia games, they still have the problem, even in 2015, 2016 when they're being released. They still have the problem of really, really recycled dungeons. And I just wish that even with these PS2 era kind of graphics, I just wish that they could have put some unique content. I don't mind if it's low budget, but I would have just preferred, unique content. And that's one of the things I really was surprised by, because it's like this is an older game, yet like in the later games made after this, like in 2015, 2016, those Neptunia games, they recycle like mad, even though you did something better beforehand. Which kind of makes me think, hey, did they actually spend too much of a budget making this game, and then they ended up recycling shamelessly? I guess it's okay, because a lot of the people, as I said, it's not really, they don't play it for the gameplay, it's more for the character interactions, banter between characters, this kind of stuff. It's a fun game, really, really lighthearted and fun, and these games, you can often find them cheap when they're being re-released on Steam. You can buy them for cheap when there's a sale, and these games have long playtimes. And I think that, which one was it? Hyperdimension, they call it V2, I think, as well, they call it. And it's not 5-2, and people get confused. It's called Victory 2. And I know that game was really long. It had all of the Japanese publishers in them. Like, they had parodies of Konami and Square Enix and stuff. That game was so long. Like, that game was like a visual novel on its own. My god, that was... And what I'm trying to say is that these games are so long, so if you're on a budget, or if you're playing games and there's not many good games coming out, these will satisfy you a lot. You can get so much playtime. It's a good bang for your buck. That's why I like these games so much. When I initially started playing these games, because I actually played the old Neptunia games before Steam. I played them on the PS3, and those games were so shitty and broken. But now when I'm playing the re-release, I see that these publishers, developers, they're putting more effort into making these games. I sign up for the newsletters, sometimes I do the betas, and they're trying really hard to make better products, selling better products, and they're doing a bit better now. They know what their niche is, and they're catering to the audience. So I say, yeah, if you can find Omega Quintet cheap, try it. You might like it. It is a weird game. It has a lot of stupid JRPG tropes, but a lot of the plot is lovable in its own way. If you enjoyed watching the content in this video, please consider giving it a like. Also, please consider subscribing to my channel so that you can be the first to receive all of my latest content.